This video will cover the histology of the pineal gland. So the pineal gland, also called the pineal body or the epiphysis cerebri or just epiphysis, is a small neuroendocrine gland, and it regulates diurnal rhythms. In shape, it's a flattened pine cone shaped structure, hence its name pineal. It's located at the posterior wall of the third ventricle, near the middle of the brain, and it's about 5 to 8 millimeters high and maybe 3 to 5 millimeters in diameter. So it's fairly small, and it only has a weight of about 100 to 200 milligrams. It's connected to the posterior commissure, as you can see in this image right over here. Here's the pineal, and it's connected to the posterior commissure here. So let's look at the histology of the pineal. So here is a midline section through a pineal gland, and this is from an infant, so it's fairly pristine other than some of the blood clots here that happen during processing. This is the conical end, right? So you can see the anterior end at the top here. This is the area here where it's attached to the commissure. So it's formed when there's an evagination of the posterior portion of the roof of the third ventricle, which is the diencephalon. So even though that this specimen is coming from an infant, it still has these dark calcifications here, which you can see at a little higher mag here. And these are called corpora arenacea, or brain sand. And these are going to be diagnostic when you ID this thing. So keep an eye on those. So here's another pineal gland from an adult. And this is a cross section through the body of the pineal rather than the midline longitudinal kind of section we just saw. There is much more brain sand in this adult specimen. And in this higher magnification inset, you can see that the calcifications have a layered appearance. So what are the features overall of the pineal gland? So it is covered by a capsule, and that surface of the gland is actually encapsulated by pia mater. The stroma is comprised of connective tissue septa that go into the gland and divide it into irregular lobules, and these are rich in reticular fibers, as you can see in this reticular stain here. And the parenchyma of the gland, which is these clusters of cells between the connective tissue septa here and here and here, is comprised of two different cell types. So what are those? They are pinealocytes and glial cells. So let's talk about the pinealocytes first. They are the chief cells of the pineal gland. In other words, they make up the majority of the parenchymal cells. They are the cells that produce and release melatonin. Melatonin is the hormone that helps regulate the diurnal rhythms. And it has some other functions that we'll discuss a little later. So they are arranged in clumps or cords within those lobules. They have round nuclei, often deeply enfolded, with one or more prominent nucleoli, which you can see pretty nicely in this image to the right here. You can see the numerous nucleoli, kind of 1, 2, 3 in that one, in these rounded kind of looking nuclei here. They also have elongated cytoplasmic processes, which are not very apparent in this sort of preparation, that interface with capillaries, and that indicates their neuroendocrine function. The other cell type is a glial cell, often called interstitial cells, or sometimes just astrocytes, as you can see in this image here. These are darker, more irregularly shaped nuclei. They're only about 5% of the cells in the gland, and really they look analogous to pituocytes that we saw in the pituitary. and to astrocytes that you see in the CNS. So what does the pineal gland do? It's a photosensitive organ. It's connected to the visual system, and you can see that connection here in the diagram below. It regulates day-night cycle, the circadian rhythm, via the melatonin production, which occurs during the dark cycle. It obtains information about the light and dark cycles from the retina via the retinohypothalamic tract, which connects in the suprachiasmatic nucleus, all right, and via some sympathetic neural tracts that travel into the pineal gland. So here you can see when light comes into the eye and strikes some of those ganglion cells here, and those connect at the suprachiasmatic nucleus, down, and then back up to the pineal. So what does melatonin do? As I said before, it regulates the body rhythms, day and night cycles. It also inhibits secretion of gonadotropin releasing hormone, and thereby regulates the production of steroid hormones in the gonads, particularly as related to the menstrual cycle. And it has lately been found to lower intraocular pressure. So melatonin synthesis is actually controlled by something called melanopsin. Melanopsin is a photopigment present in a subclass of those retinal ganglion cells that are photoreactive. When melanopsin is activated by the short wavelength component of light, in other words, blue light here, it suppresses melatonin synthesis, and that, of course, would affect the functions that are also connected to melatonin release. So just a couple of clinical notes. Those brain sand or corpora arenacea are very useful in imaging clinically. The concretions are recognizable in childhood and, as I said previously, increase in number with age. And they are opaque to X-rays and located at the midline of the brain. Therefore, they serve as convenient markers in radiographic and CT imaging. Second, melatonin inhibits gonadosteroid hormone synthesis. So tumors that destroy the pineal gland are associated with precocious puberty. The pineal gland also has a role in adjusting to sudden changes in the day length. For instance, the phenomenon known as jet lag. And the pineal plays a role in emotional responses to a reduced length of day during the winter, especially in temperate or subarctic zones, and that's known as seasonal affective disorder. So that's all we've got for today, and we will take a look at the pineal during the eye lab. We'll see you there.